Abraham Lincoln famously said that a penny saved is a penny earned. That still holds very much truth today in our world today. And as a farmer or a homesteader, it's words to live by. The biggest things that we can save money on our farm or our homestead is by doing things ourselves. Saving money on labor, saving money on contractors, by building fence, by building buildings. And today we're going to talk about working on small engines. So in today's video, we will go over my mechanical troubleshooting process. I have an acronym for you. I will show you how I'm going to fix this weeder. Okay, it currently does not run. It was given to me as junk because the guy before was going to throw it in the trash. He could not get it to start. And I said, let me take a whack at it. If you're going to throw it away, I could use this on the farm and the homestead. So he gave me this weeder. It doesn't work, but today I'm going to show you how to fix it. Now this mechanical video is going to be a very basic video. So this is kind of an intro to mechanics, or mechanics 101 if you will. We're going to do the very basics. But if you can learn to do these very basics on small stuff like this on your farm or your homestead, it will save you a bunch of money. Even if you have to take it to mechanic later, you can let them know what you've done, and that gets them halfway through the battle of figuring out what is wrong with your equipment. So stick around. Hopefully I can help you get a little bit more information on how to do this yourself. If you're overwhelmed with mechanics, this video is going to help you out. Let's get to it. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining us. Just to give you some numbers, we have an FS85 Stihl Weedeater. That's what we're going to work on today. I will talk about other types of engines and chainsaws a little bit as we go through the video, but I am not a master mechanic. I didn't go to college to be a mechanic. I didn't take any special courses. So how did I learn to do this stuff? Growing up on a farm. My grandfather was a great mechanic. He was actually a mechanic in the Army, and his grandfather was a mechanic and had a gas station in the 40s and 20s through that era. But I learned from him. It was very basic stuff, and now I continue to fix stuff myself. And don't get me wrong, I can turn a 1-hour job into a 6-hour job, and I chalk it up to education. So throughout the years, I've gotten much better, but I am no expert. If you are already a mechanic, this video is probably not going to be a great video for you, but if you're looking to do basics and looking to learn something new, that's what we're going to work on today. And we're going to start with the acronym FAIR, F-A-I-R. So I'll take you through this acronym, and if you want to be done with the video, that is fine. But the acronym is FAIR, F-A-I-R, for fuel, air, ignition, and those three things will cause it to run. So that's what you need. You need fuel, you need some kind of a ignition source to get it sparked, and you need air to mix with that fuel to cause that explosion. And those three things are typically 90% of the problem when it comes to a combustion engine. There are some bigger, more costly, expensive things, but when we're talking about basic repair, that's what we're going to go through today, and I'm going to take you through each step. I'll show you how I do it on this one, and I'll talk about some other things that you should do. But that's what we're looking at. Fuel, air, ignition will cause it to run. All right, so I brought this home. It had fuel in it. And if you're buying one at an auction, if you're buying one used, if somebody gives you one like this situation, I'm going to take you through this, and you're going to do this exact same thing. You're going to start with the fuel. First off, does it have fuel in it? So obviously all engines need the fuel source to run. It seems like that would be elementary to check if it has fuel in it, but I don't want you to do that yet. When you bring something home like this, I want you to empty out all of the fluids. So if it has fuel in it, pick it up, take this cap off, get you an oil pan, and dump all of that fluid out. If you're buying an engine that has oil in it, okay, so this is a 2-cycle engine. The one big thing is that it doesn't have oil. The oil is mixed into the gasoline. So you'll see these little bottles, it says makes 2 quarts or makes 1 gallon, whatever it would be, whatever size bottle you're buying. I tend to stick with name brand oil mixtures. So I don't buy a discounted one, I buy the Stihl Pro. It's what I've used for the last 20 years or however long. And so I stick with stuff that I know and stuff that I trust. Plus, there is a Stihl dealership just a few miles away from me. So if you say Husqvarna is better or Eco is better or whatever it would be, I stick with Stihl products because of the customer service and the closeness that I have to the dealership that has everything for me, and they're a pretty reliable product. But it doesn't matter what brand you have, doesn't matter what brand somebody gives you, Dump every ounce out. In a chainsaw, you're gonna take the bar off, and you're also gonna empty out the bar oil. If you don't know what the bar oil is, you probably don't own a chainsaw. So the first step in this engine running is that it has good fuel, and the fuel gets into the carburetor. Now we're not gonna put fuel back in this while we test, and you'll see why in a minute, but we are gonna inspect our fuel lines. Are they intact? There's a little filter on the end of these things that goes on the end of the fuel line that is down inside the fuel tank. And I actually have one here that I can show you. I can get it out of this box. So it'll look something similar to this. I will talk about this kit in a minute, but you're gonna check all that stuff. Is that filter gummed up? Is there junk down in the fuel tank? Okay, you might run this through a little strainer and see if there's particles down in there, but you're gonna empty all that out. If you look down in it and there's still mud or dust or whatever you would see down in that fuel tank that's not fuel, put some gasoline in it, shake it around, and dump it out again. Get the fuel tank clean. But you're gonna inspect those lines. Are they connected? Are they cracked? Or in this case, they had black tape wrapped around them because they were leaking. So the next step is air. The engine must get air. Air mixes with that fuel as it's in a vapor, and then we need that to create a spark. So you need the fuel source, and you need oxygen, and you need an ignition, so air. So we're gonna look at the air filter next, and what I would recommend if you're working on something that does not run, just take the air filter out. Just take it completely out, clean it. So if this is a bigger engine, they'll have a case or maybe it'll be a ring, whatever it would be, air filter. You're gonna vacuum that area out. Maybe there's a mouse nest in there. You have no clue. But on these weed eaters, they're simply little pads. Let's take a look at those. So on the side of our weed eater here, we have our little air filter, okay? It's simply you push this button down. Every weed eater is gonna be different, but you're gonna take this cap off. It might have a screw in it. It might have a push down button, whatever. This has two different air filters. It has this foam pad thing that sticks in here. I'm not sure this actually even does anything other than keep pressure on this filter pad. And then this is your filter pad. It's brand new, okay? This is a brand new one, I know. When I took this off, it was all gummed up and brown and had junk in here as well. And so you throw them away. These are super cheap. Just go ahead and replace them if you're doing an upgrade on a weed eater or a chainsaw or a small motor and it's not been yours. You bought it at an auction, whatever the case would be, right? You're gonna get this air filter and just take it out and set it to the side, clean all this out. Rags, I put brake fluid on a little rag, clean all the gunk out, and I get the air filter out of it. Next is I for ignition, okay? So you would think of a key in a car, but ignition on these is gonna be spark. So is it getting a spark? Got your air, got your oxygen and your fuel, and you need something to light that on fire now, and that is a spark plug in this. So there's two things you're gonna need to check. There's gonna be little switches on the handle on these, or the same thing on your chainsaws, same thing on small engines. You're gonna have some kind of a key thing. So you're gonna check the wires. Is the wires broke? I take them apart and clean the connectors a little bit. I put all those back, and then I take the spark plug out and check the spark plug. Most spark plugs are a 3/4 inch socket, which I have, and they actually do make a special spark plug socket. It has a little foam pad in there, and it keeps it from falling out. Now you'll notice I've already taken all the guarding off because another part of what I do in the beginning is clean, which we'll get to there after you test, okay? So once I test and figure out what's going on, I take things apart and clean. If you notice that it's really nasty, you might go ahead and do this because you're gonna wanna do it anyways, and it makes it much easier to get to the spark plug. So I got my 3/4 inch socket, got it going left. We're just gonna break this loose. One turn there and it should break loose. This is a brand new one. I already checked the old one. And we have our spark plug. Now, got it going a little bit. I pulled a few times on it and you can see there's fuel on it. Now, the other day when I took this off, it was completely coated with brown fuel and oil and a mixture there, and I cleaned it off. I took a little sandpaper to it to see if I could get it to spark, and the spark plug was just nasty and bad, so I ordered immediately a brand new spark plug. To test your spark plug, the easiest way to do it is to take it out like we did, put it back in the connector, and lay it on the block here like this. And then you're gonna look at it and pull the cord. There's no fuel, it's not gonna run. You're simply checking, is there a spark right there on your spark plug? Now, in case you didn't know, spark plugs have a specific gap measurement. So I want to show you that. So there's a gap right here between this pin and this arm, okay? That distance between there creates that spark that lights that fire. Every engine, whether manufacturer or whatever, every type of spark plug is going to have a different gap. You will need a spark plug gap of some sort. Now, it probably won't look like this. If you're looking for one, they're super cheap. They're usually around the cash register at an auto parts store. Sometimes they're round and you stick them in and you simply turn it into the correct measurement. Well, how do you find this measurement? I simply Googled it. I just put in FS85 Stihl Weedeater spark plug gap, and it came right up. I think this is a 0.2, but you need to know if it's metric or in inches, okay? And most of those wheels will have both diagrams on them. I actually have one of these sets in metric and one in standard, okay? And so this came from my grandfather. It says Sears, made in the USA. These are, you know, decently expensive today, but they're not awful, less than $20. My grandfather probably paid 12 cents for this in 1940. So I keep this around for nostalgia a little bit, but they still work. They're still a great measurement. You simply slide that in there and wiggle it back and forth. That arm will open up some, and it will give you the correct gap on your spark plug. Will the engine run if it's not gapped correctly? It will, and it may not run well. It will not stop it from running, but it needs to run at its peak performance and run correctly. The spark plug needs to be gapped. So if I brought home a weed eater like this, no matter where I got it, I would immediately just go ahead and put a new spark plug in it and gap that spark plug. If it ran, but it wasn't running well, and I wanted to try to work on it a little bit, that would be the first thing I would do. I would gap and test the spark plug. Because, you know, so you're buying something used and it didn't work real well when you got it, the guy before you probably didn't gap it correctly. So that's the first thing I would check once I have found out if it's getting spark or not. All right, so that is my troubleshooting process for starting on something. Now we'll do that, and I've worked on this a little bit already, cleaning it up because it was super nasty. I'll walk you through what I did, but that's where I would start, and I would put this back together and see if it ran. I am going to show you a few things now that you should inspect on any kind of engine for major malfunctional errors, and it'll probably be very noticeable as soon as you take that guard off, but let's go through some of those little things. So as you look at the motor, you put it up on a table like this, hopefully. This is your block, essentially. The piston goes up and down in here. These are 1 cylinders, okay? This is a 2-cycle motor, which is the way it works. It works a little differently than valves and oil in a 4-stroke or 4-cycle. But we're gonna look at this block, okay? That's the key thing. Is there any major cracks in it? Is it dirty? Is it filled with mud? And this one was. It had grass clippings and all kinds of things. I took the air compressor to it, and then I took probably 20 rags to get this thing clean. But if this thing is cracked, it's probably better just to scrap it. You could take it to a local shop and see if they had a spare one laying around that they would sell you and put it back together. But most likely, if the block is cracked, you're gonna have major issues because it will do issues to the piston and things inside typically. So if it was cracked, I'd junk it. But it's intact, as you can see. We're gonna look at the exhaust on this side over here. Is it holding on? Is it falling off? Is it rusted? So it's intact. The carburetor, everything in here was intact. Everything was together. We're gonna check all these wires. They were all good, okay? We're gonna flex the throttle and it moves, okay? So everything works on the throttle there. We're gonna flip this little switch up and down inside this carburetor and watch that the choke moves up and down. Things seem to be operating correctly. And the last thing, which we could have done when we did the fuel, or we would do now, is check all of our fuel lines. When I did this earlier, they simply were cracked. It would not run. Once I got a spark, it started kind of up, but it ran really bad. And I noticed it was getting kind of wet around here, which is why it was so greasy when I brought it home. And these lines had cracks in them, and in fact, he had wrapped black tape around it. And so I bought a kit a rebuild kit for this, and I want to walk you through the things that are in that. So how do you get a rebuild kit and what should be in it? Well, you can obviously go to any store that sells the product which you have, okay? So if it's a Stihl, you go to a Stihl dealership, wherever they would sell them. You can also go on Amazon, which is where I got this, and I simply typed in the FS85, the model number, the brand, which was Stihl, and I put rebuild kit or spark plug or anything like that, and these kits will come up. So what are the things I'm going to recommend to you that you should have in your kit? Because every kit will be different, and you need to look at what you should get. If you're going to tear it apart this far, this is what I think you should get. We'll start with the same acronym, right? We want everything to replace the fuel. So we're going to get new fuel lines, okay? We're going to get a new fuel filter, this thing here. We're going to get new grommets. Now, every weed eater is different, and this is really hard to see, but on these Stihls, there's these little rubber grommets that hold the line down in the tank underneath here. They're not really easy to work with, especially if they're older, they get harder. So a new one that's rubbery and can squeeze, it's going to help you out, so just make sure your kit has it in it. Next is air. So we're going to get all new air filters. This one has two. It has the pad, and it has this actual paper or carbon filter, right? We're going to get a new spark plug because we're going to need that. And then lastly, we're going to get a new primer button. I have found, for me, the primer button is the #1 first thing to fail on a new weeder. If you don't keep it inside especially, but as you use it, if it sits out in the sun, if it doesn't get used very often, so fuel needs to stay in there to keep that piece of plastic lubricated, that thing will crack. And when it cracks, it will not prime, and it's very hard to start without priming it. And so I've seen people tape them, whatever. They're super cheap. Just make sure your kit has it, or buy the kit and buy the primers. These things are pretty much universal between brands. There are some brands that use different ones, but the type that's on these Stihls will work on a lot of other brands. All right, so we did our initial testing, just like I showed you. We got a Bosch spark plug. I prefer a name brand, a Bosch or a Champion, but not some Chinese numbered spark plug. Okay, if you get a Chinese spark plug in a kit, which is what this is, it came in this kit, I will keep this for an emergency, but I'm not going to put it in there if I have time to work on it. I prefer a name brand spark plug. Is it really that much difference? Probably not. It's probably made in the exact same factory actually, but that's just my choice. That's what I do. So I replaced the bulb. I got new air filters to put on it. I replaced the fuel lines. I cleaned it up and spent a lot of cleaning. And now we need to see if it's going to run. The other thing that I segregated out of that video clip was the carburetor, okay? So I did clean the carburetor. When I had those fuel lines off, I took this housing off. There's two nuts in here. It just slides right off. I took some brake cleaner and some rags, and I cleaned it up. I did not adjust the carburetor. What we did today, the basics that I showed you, should make this thing run, okay? So we're going to check it here in a second. But it should make it run. If it does not run well, if it does not run smoothly, the carburetor probably needs to be adjusted. That is a step 2 of higher level mechanics on these things. So what I would recommend, if you do this and you get it to run, great. If you want to try adjusting this, find a specific video to a specific model on adjusting the carburetor. Okay, I have found there are some different tricks. They obviously have different carburetors and different screws and different adjustments. And it would be very hard for me to show you to cover every type because this video is about the basics. So you will look for a carburetor adjustment, but that is after we put it together and test it, which we're going to do right now. I'm going to throw this all back together and give her a tug and see what happens. Well, hey, it ran. I was really taking a risk there because I really had no clue. I could have looked like a big dummy on video if that thing didn't work. But it ran. I would say it doesn't run perfectly yet, okay? So it'll need some time. So if it's like that, I noticed if I let it sit and idle, so I just took it off there after the video was over, and I let it idle for a second, and it only idled for 5 to 6 seconds, and then it died. So it probably needs to be adjusted just a little bit on the carburetor. But before I do that, before I go messing with the carburetor, I'm gonna run it a while. I'm gonna get the fuel to run through that. It's 30 degrees anyways, and I only ran it for that minute that we showed on the video there. And so it really needs some time to work up. It's probably got gunk built up in it because he cranked and cranked and cranked, and he had bad fuel in it and all those things. So I'll run it. It will run, and I'll run it and get it going for quite a while and let it burn some of that out and see what happens. And then later, if I still want to adjust it, then I'll watch a specific video. I don't know how to adjust this one, okay? So I will watch a video and I will start adjusting and tweaking just a little bit on this. If you get these really out of whack, you're probably gonna have to take it to a shop and just let them know, hey, my car, it's not running so well, I just need my carburetor adjusted. They're probably gonna roll their eyes and take 10 minutes, but they're gonna do that same thing for me, okay? So I'm not a master mechanic at these things, but I'm showing you the basics. 90% of the time, if you do what we did in today's video, you're gonna get one of these things to run unless something major is wrong with it. So now what? So I got this free weed eater. I've got probably 20 bucks in it. I bought the spark plug, I bought the kit, used a can of brake cleaner, you know, whatever. I put probably an hour worth of time into it. Outside of the video, new primer. You saw all the stuff that we did there. What am I gonna do with the $20 weed eater that runs now? I've got something that a viewer recommended to me. It's this wire brush thing, and I'm hoping to put this on to help me clear fence rows. Now, you can buy a straight blade. They have ones that look like saw blades. I kind of like the look of this one. I'm a little bit worried, and I haven't put this on my good weed eaters, the ones that I have that I bought new, because if my kids hit the fence with this, it's gonna tear stuff up. But now, I have a weed eater I can test it on, and so we can make another video showing you how this works with clearing fence lines and briars and those kind of things. And so I'm gonna take the head off of this thing, install this, and give her a go. If it doesn't work, no big deal. I still have my weed eaters, and now I have one to do some testing with, and it's nice. We now have 3 weed eaters on the farm, and 2 boys and me can weed eat, and we can get a lot done quick. So I'm gonna put this back together, put my covers back on, and we'll go through all of this and run it and see what we do in another video. Well, there you have it. This is the video. I hope that helped you. It's obviously a very basic video. If you have a better acronym, I'd really like to know it. I'm always looking to learn something. If there's something that I can do different, if there's something that I missed, comment that down below. Let our viewers know. I will put, obviously I've got good fuel in here now. Until I use this, I'm gonna dump that fuel out, okay? So I need the rest of my fuel, but I try to keep good fuel with this. Fuel, 90 to 6 months. 3 months to 6 months is the longest I last fuel. I prefer at least once a quarter to be emptying that can. So if that tells you how much you weed on your small farmer homestead, that's the size can you should have. Usually we have a 2-gallon can, and it's pretty big because it runs a lot of things around here, chainsaws, weed eaters, hedge trimmer that we have, extended pole saw that we have. And so we go through it. But if you don't try to save money by getting a big can and only going to the fuel station once. Have that specific can. We take a paint marker and we write fuel mix on it so that nobody gets confused, because that could be bad for other engines, okay? So make sure you know that this is a fuel mixed can. You keep it separated. And really this is coming from a dad, right? This is my dad's perspective to make sure my kids don't mess things up. So I hope that's kind of a helpful tip for you there as you're running your small farmer homestead. Thanks for watching. We are going to continue our series on how to start a small farmer homestead, but we're going to do some videos like this in between as we actually do work. And so I have a couple good days of weather coming up, hopefully, and we're going to do some more stuff like this, but we'll get back to that series. So I'm not quitting on that yet. If you've been following along and watching, please give us that thumbs up. It really does help our channel. Thanks for watching. Until next time.